let's not just get old, let's just do something, right? It's not just, you're not just supposed to get old. I have this thing that I feel that every year I'm getting younger because of the knowledge and the wisdom I get. I think I feel much younger every year. So on my next birthday, I'm not 43, I will probably be like 41.
Hello, you are listening to the Late Bloomer Living podcast, where we are reimagining and redefining what it means to be in midlife, where we are gathering energy, momentum, and excitement for our next chapter via candid conversations with other midlifers about their own pivots, pitfalls, and triumphs. I'm Yvonne Marchese, your host, and I'm so happy you're here. You've probably heard it before. Follow your passion. Joseph Campbell coined the term follow your bliss. And it's become so common that many people think it's a bunch of hooey, but I want to talk today about what's possible when you follow your instincts, when you follow your passion, when you don't say no, when you allow yourself to say yes, to follow a curiosity. My guest today is Channa Silva. Channa has had a successful career in technology, in the telecommunications industry, but his real passion is music. He calls himself the ultimate music fan who lives and breathes everything music. He's been a passionate music fan since he was 5 years old and attended close to 1,000 gigs around the world and was able to meet many of his musical heroes. But during the COVID shutdown, he found himself missing the live music experience, like so many of us did, right? And besides that, the community of other music fans that he loved so much. And he thought other friends of his might be missing the music scene too, so he started hosting Zoom calls where they could talk about music and connect. And that simple act of bringing together a community of music fans has led him down a whole new path. And now he's the host of a podcast called Channa, Channa, Channa. And he's not stopping there. I can't wait for you to hear his story. So without further ado, here's Channa Silva. Let's go. Hey, Channa, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Yvonne, for inviting me.
Oh my goodness, this is so fun. I always like to say where I met people, and you and I met in Clubhouse in this just like great community of podcasters. And just a shout out to Carrie Zarb and Kim White and Pedro and God, just all those people, not to forget Sid Meadows, and,
yeah.
God, I could go on and on. All the folks that we've come to know and love in Clubhouse, right?
Right. It's really a exciting platform. Like I got onto Clubhouse probably like 3 months ago, and 3-4 months ago, and someone invited me, and then it really grew. Then I started connecting with the podcasting community. I started connecting with the music community, and then I found these amazing rooms and communities there, and then I really got connected with my own Sri Lankan communities. I'm a big part of the Sri Lankan Clubhouse community, actually. So I
Right.
have a
And you're
big
actually
following.
doing a lot to help other people in your community start their own podcasts, right? Am I right about
R-
that from some of the things you've
r-
talked about in the room?
right. I started this room club called podcasting in Sinhala. Sinhala is the language of Sri Lankan. So I do sort of monthly podcast rooms about podcasting. So whatever I learn from the international rooms, I go and basically say that in the native language. And then I also started recording this, and I'm putting this on an education platform in Sri Lanka that one of my friends started. So we publish that content over there. So whoever wants to start a podcast, whoever want to grow, how to monetize, I sort of talk about these things. So I think I've done so far like 5-6 episodes on that. So I'm continue to do that. It's more of a monthly thing that I want to do, so I give something back to my community, back to
It's
my
amazing.
native country.
So cool. And I love, just to say that you're in the Philippines right now, right?
Right.
And it's 10:30 at night where you are, and it's 10:30 in the morning where I am, and it's all because of Clubhouse, because it's this international access to people, meeting. I've met people, and Carrie's in Australia, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And then the funny thing would be like if it was morning for me, like you will be in the past, I will be in the present because of the 12-hour difference. So I always keep like, oh, I'm talking to someone from the past, like it's sort of like time travel, right? But today I think we are on the same day, right?
I think we are. Yeah, we must be. We must be. That's hilarious. Wow. Whoosh, that whole time thing. So yeah, the reason I realized I wanted to talk to you about having you as a guest on the podcast is because of something you said in one of our rooms recently, talking about going back to school to study not art history, but music history, and that you were thinking of writing a book. And just I was looking at you're just a huge music fan, right? That's what your podcast is about. So you started your podcast, what do you have, like 140 something episodes?
Yeah, I think had 157 so far published.
157. Wow. So you've been doing this, is it a weekly show, or have you had it for like 2 years? How long has it been?
So I think it's about 1.5 years now. So
Okay.
I started, this during when the pandemic started. So the podcast is actually a result of COVID, which is a positive result. So I record mostly weekly. I record the weekly. I try to record. Sometimes I do like 2 or 3 episodes a weekend. I normally record on the weekend, so it's about like 2 3 episodes or some. Last weekend I record like 5 episodes.
Wow.
So then I have enough content to publish it. Like I release mostly like within 5 days. Every 5 days I would have a new episode out. So that's sort of my
Wow.
frequency. Yeah.
Wow. So your podcast comes out more than once a week, clearly,
Yes.
right? You're
Yeah.
putting
Yeah.
it out all the time. I only do once a week. That's it for me. But wow, that is quite a schedule to keep up with. So I want to hear about your journey to podcasting.
Right. I think before I talk about the podcast, I have to tell you about my sort of musical journey because I started, I became a fan of music, I think maybe 4 or 5 years old, because my dad gave me this one tape. And I remember listening to one of the songs of Elton John, the Nikita. So that was on that tape. It was a
Oh,
compilation. And I think I was probably 5 years old.
so
From
Elton
that,
John oh, I love him. He was one of my early loves as
right.
well. Yeah.
I don't remember the other songs. It was a compilation tape. So from that moment, I really got into this music thing where I started collecting tapes. I started looking for lyrics back in the day, there was no internet. It was all I have to look for magazines. I have to look for papers. So that lifestyle was a constant thing. Whatever I did, I mean, I actually studied very well in school. I did all that, but music was really always consistent. I was really doing that. When I ever got the time, I was going through tapes. I was going to shops. I was buying the tapes, looking for tapes. That was the whole lifestyle. And for the last 20 years, which is from year 2000 up to 2020, uh, I've been going to concerts the whole 20 years. I think I probably went to maybe 1,000 concerts, which I don't know. I started documenting most of it, but there are still a lot of local shows that I don't remember. So all this, I've been going to concerts, and then I've been going and meeting my musical heroes. I met most of the people that I wanted to meet as a child. That was sort of my goal. So I did this. I traveled to other countries. I watched some concerts in Europe. I went to Australia. I mostly go to like the neighboring countries to see the shows, right? So what happened is I always knew that I wanted to do something in music, but I knew that I don't have the skills to actually like play the instruments and write songs, but I knew I wanted to do something about something related to music. That was always my thing. I always felt that. So what I was doing when I was going to the concerts is I started recording videos of the concerts and started putting in YouTube, started writing blogs about the concerts I went, and I started something called Metal Royalties Philippines, which was like a fan community of all the hardcore fans, like the people who goes to the front of the barricade. So
Uh-huh.
we had this group, and we started doing a lot of collaborations with that, and then I even had a radio show where I guest hosted for some time in the Philippines, because of all this the passion about music. Then what happened is when COVID started, all these shows got canceled and I couldn't travel anymore. I couldn't meet anybody, and all the shops got closed. So all these things happened, and then I really got I really felt down when that happens. Like, because of that lifestyle, because I was constantly traveling. I would travel to Singapore sometimes 2 3 months, 2 3 times a month, because like one weekend there were like the cases where I was in Singapore every weekend because there were like different shows. So I would just travel, but I got really good at it because I was performing very well at work. I was really managing my time because I had to, I had things to do. So I have to make sure that I utilize my time very well. So I got really good at, time management and scheduling and all this because I was really good at it. But when COVID happened, it really, I felt that, the whole world fell apart. Then I thought that maybe I need to start talking to some of my friends. Like, let's see if they're feeling the same. So I started talking to a few close friends, and then we talk about music, some experiences we had. So that was the idea of the podcast. So that's how it started. So I just did some Zoom calls with some of my friends, and then I thought maybe we should record these conversations because this might be relatable to other people. So we started recording. Initially I actually started putting it in YouTube, like, because that was, I felt that was more. And then I felt that because the conversations were longer and very insightful, very deep. So I thought maybe it's better to put the audio as a podcast. So I then sort of converted that into a podcast. Then it became a podcast. And what happened is that once I started putting some of these personal episodes, some of the artists reach out to me. So they said, I can relate to what you're saying, and I would like to give an artist perspective to you on the things that we talk about. So then there were,
Wow, that's
yeah. So that's how,
when that happened the first time, what did you do? Oh my gosh.
yeah, I was actually on those calls. I was just trying to avoid becoming a fanboy.
Right.
Like it was. These were artists that I was really close to, but it still was a big deal to personally talk to them, like, asking personal questions. And
Mm-hmm.
but they were really open, and a lot of artists, because they knew that I was a genuine fan, I'm doing it really for the love of it. So they gave me a chance. A lot of artists actually gave me a chance to talk to them. So that's how it started. Then it took about probably 6 months. It took about 6 months when I suddenly started getting requests from all these different places, like from the UK, from Canada, from South Africa, all these promotions and record label. They wanted to like, uh, they wanted me to host their, like, feature their artists on my podcast. So then suddenly it became an international affair.
God,
And the rest.
that is amazing. And I just want to say for people, for anybody listening, that this is like, to me, such a perfect example of you starting from a place of just following your gut, of following your own interest in what you love, and you took a step and you said, hey guys, let's get together on a Zoom call with friends. You know what, these conversations that are so great, let's record them. You know what, that's so great, let's put it to YouTube. Wait a minute, maybe it's better as a podcast. Boom, boom, boom. It's like, it's not like it just started off as a podcast and you instantly had, it's not like you were going after artists right away. It's this thing that has evolved. How amazing. Can you do you
Yeah.
kind of like want to pinch yourself sometimes?
Yeah, actually, I always say this in the clubhouse rooms that like a year ago, 1.5 year ago, I was just a regular, just a music fan. Now people like introduce me as a podcaster, like so it's really it's a good feeling. Like I built something about myself which I didn't had like probably a year ago, right? So it's something I
Yeah.
really built. So
Oh my gosh, I'm just I'm so happy for you. And I want to back up a little bit because when you talked about your job and how you were like doing well at your job and managing your time so that you could go to these concerts and all that, your job is actually in the telecom industry, right?
yeah.
And you're doing IT. Is
Oh
that
yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to back up a little bit. You're to 5 year old Channa and the love of music and I don't did you ever play an instrument? Did you try?
Yes. Back, yeah, yeah. When I was a child, I tried. I started going to like guitar classes, but I never like I tried it couple of lessons, then I gave up because I was more into like I was more into like collecting and acquiring stuff, and I actually have couple of guitars so still. I
Mm-hmm.
still buy like guitars and stuff as well because I'm like huge fan of that. But 2017, one of my friends challenged me that if you love music so much, why don't you try performing live? Like, so
Ooh.
what I did, I actually went to guitar class and I learned. I did like 6 lessons. I think it was like 6 weeks. I did 6 lessons, and then I actually performed live one song. So I have a video of that,
What?
and which I'm really proud of because I was able to play that after 6 lessons. And but I did practice like every day the same song, and the same song I played was "Highway to Hell"
Uh-huh.
AC/DC. So
Uh-huh. My gosh, wow. And so at some point, like you clearly decided, well, I'm not a performer back in the day, right?
right,
You got into IT and you followed a path of doing the work that was going to pay your bills and all that, right?
right.
Was it ever a passion going down that path?
Yeah, actually, so uh, I actually studied to become a doctor. I actually studied biology, right?
Really?
Yeah, so the way that it works in Sri Lanka is that you have to have certain number of marks because the universities are government-owned universities, right? So you have to have a certain number of marks. So I studied biology, and I think I passed all the subjects, but I didn't have the enough marks to go to become a doctor, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so the options were that I could go and become maybe a bio like a lab person or something like that or do something. But I felt that this was a very conscious decision I took because my parents they worked their whole life, and they worked in the Middle East. They went to Middle East when I was a child. They worked there as foreign workers, my mom and dad. And then
Mm-hmm.
the only thing they wanted to do was to just give me education, and that was their main goal. They didn't have like other goals, like. And
Right.
so they spent for all the education. That I thought that at that point, I don't think I want my parent to spend for me anymore, because I think they have done enough. Because I think that time I was probably like 19 years old, 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided that maybe it's time for me to really quit this education and try to work. So I started looking for work. And at that time I thought maybe for work it will be better if I knew about computers. So I went and learned. I took a diploma in like basic computing. It's a diploma in computer studies. That's what I started. And then parallelly I started working. I started actually as a telephone operator. That was my first job.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's ironic that I'm actually working in telecom industry now, but I started as a telecom operator, and I did that for like 3 months. And then once I completed my diploma, I actually got some prospects of working for an IT company. So I started as a QA engineer and all this. But eventually, along the way, I took all the opportunities. I never said no to anything, any challenge that I got. I always said, okay, yes, I will do it. I will try. And that's why. So I've been in the industry now for like 22 years. Um, and I'm working for one of the leading companies now and doing all the major projects like in 5G and stuff like that, which I don't really talk about much in the clubhouse and there, but that's basically what I do. I'm behind all this artificial intelligence and 5G stuff. So
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. And I love that you say that you never say no to opportunities. And that so clearly plays into what's happening for you now around the passion for music that you have is
yeah,
you're just following the next step that seems to be in front of you, that seems to be, oh, let's do this now, let's try that now. um how amazing. What a great lesson for other people.
yeah, and it's always what I feel is it's nothing wrong trying and failing. At least you try. So when I did the podcasting, I learned myself, right, how to do the podcast, how to upload it, how to create all this, and how to promote everything. I'm learning. So there's no point of, I mean, you can at least try, and nobody's going to say anything if you just try it, right? And if it
Yeah,
fails,
yeah.
you do something else.
And but what strikes me right now when you're talking about that is that you already had this IT background. So the technology for you was not, I'm going to guess it was not a stumbling point, that you were comfortable enough to go in and figure that out for yourself because you have a certain amount of facility around tech.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of, it was just more of a stumbling point for me. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Right. I think the technology side, yes, because I had that ability to just learn, read something, and then understand, and how to do it. That was and one more thing that I really took from my job to the podcasting is about because I speak to customers a lot. So I speak to customers a lot. So this communication thing happens a lot more in on the job, and so I brought that sort of principles and practices into my podcast when I organize the podcast outlines, and I know how to bring you know because in the industry I am, it's always very challenging, and always you have to sell something in a way that you have to buy in from the customer. So
Mm.
you learn to how to do that, so in a nice way, how to negotiate. So I took some of that, and I took that to the table on podcast, and then I took a lot of stuff from my favorite like TVs and movies, how to bring a story, and where to place that. If I'm talking to you, I I I I find what's interesting about you, and I know where to place that in the story, where I should bring it up. So I kind of like both those practices, and I took some of those agile principles. I was working the way I actually organize my podcast. As I said, the scheduling and how I release, I sort of do. I do that. I brought that sort of project management type of thing into my practice of my podcasting, which I think which really helped.
Yeah, and I think we can all take a lesson from that. I think is where I was going with it, is that we all have something that is in our background by the time we get to midlife, where we have some experience in some parts of our life that we can bring forward into a new project, into a new passion project. And there's going to be the stuff we have to learn, and there's going to be the stuff that we can kind of naturally bring to it because we already have that skill and that talent. Which makes me wonder, is there anything that's been a challenge for you where you've kind of come up against a wall and thought, oh man, how do I do this?
Yeah, I had actually I laugh when I look at my older, like the first like early episodes. I actually laugh. Sometimes I'm kind of struggling, and I'm stuttering, or I would say those ahs and all these. There's a lot of those in the first episodes, but But what I did was I actually, when I early in the episodes, I actually record, and then I would listen to the whole thing. I would watch the whole thing. I will see what I was doing, my body language, and the what I was saying. I was kind of struggling, especially with coming up with creative ways to introduce a guest, or that was always a kind of a struggle, because that's where I even writing the show notes, I kind of sometimes struggle with it, what to write about, because that creative part is not probably what I didn't really have to build up. So I did, but I found ways. As I think what you were saying, like I I I I I started doing very short introductions instead of like so that I don't have to deal with it. But it worked because people I think were interested more in the conversation than hearing about the guest, because they knew most of the time they listen to the podcast because they know the guest who's coming on, right? So they're
Mm.
interested of that, what that person has to say.
What have you learned about yourself since you started down this new path?
I always thought that those personality types thing, like introverts, extroverts. So I thought that I was an introvert, because I was, even at work, I would hardly talk to somebody new. I would talk to someone I know very intimately, and I will have a very intimate relationships with them. But meeting somebody new, it was always a challenge. I didn't have that skills of those small talk, which was, I really struggled with the small talk. But now I think doing the podcast, I found ways to improve that, and I think I'm quite good with the small talk now, with the after I started the podcast.
Yeah, that's terrific. Wow.
Yeah, so one thing that I on this podcasting, earlier it was more of like talking about fun stuff, like about concerts, shows, what music they're putting out. But down the line it became a little bit more serious, or a little bit more personal, because we were talking about sometimes the mental health. We were talking about the struggles they had. I had guests that had publicly had some problem, like some incident they faced through, or some controversy, which I which I talked in the podcast with them, and try to get their side of things, and they try to explain what's happening, and all
Wow.
this. And then also about, we sometimes touch on this about the cancel culture and what's happening, all this, sort of the, what's happening with Facebook and all that. So sometimes I do those hard conversations, but I think I learned how to do these things now through the podcast.
Yeah. Before we started recording, you and I were talking a little bit about I guess what I just started to think about was the wide breadth of people that you've interviewed on your podcast. I mean, you told me I clearly you're a heavy metal fan from when I look at some of the people that have been on the podcast, but it really is kind of all over the map for you, right? I mean, Elton John was your first
Right.
clue in, and you're from Sri Lanka, but what you were telling me earlier that you weren't really into the music that was in your culture, that you were more into this other music, but now in midlife you're kind of starting to get an appreciation for what you grew up with and what was around you.
Yeah, so the local Sri Lankan music was always there. Like, it was on TV, it was on radio. My mom and dad, they played that songs at home, right? So I never appreciated it that those days. I knew all the songs, I knew all the artists, but I never appreciated, because I was always following maybe Metallica or Guns N' Roses or something like that. So I was always about that, right? But what happened is, I uh, once I started listening to more and more music, and I I started appreciating some of these songs, because I think I got exposed to more genres, on the different genres of the world, like the world music. Then I could relate that some of these genres actually, isn't it that the same type of music that I had in Sri Lanka, like,
Mm.
which so I could relate them. And I think one more thing, Yvonne, I think the reason that I started appreciating them is actually, it started also with the Philippines, because when I started going to the concerts, uh, I would go to meet and greets, so the VIPs and meet and greets. I would meet these international artists. One thing that I was so I became sort of a humble person because of that. I started meeting all my heroes, and what I started doing is I started respecting also the local artists here. I
Mm,
gave them the same respect I would give to an international artist. If I go to a show of a local artist, I would act the same way if I go to an international artist. So I didn't act differently. So I started giving them the same respect. Then I think that sort of translated that started appreciating the artists that I had in Sri Lanka. So I started looking up for these music. I started collecting some of them. I started asking my friends. So I went on internet and tried to buy stuff. And I think I'm really proud because I think I'm one of the Sri Lankan collectors now that have like most of those collection. Because one thing that happening in Sri Lankan music is the old records and the tapes and stuff is like it's gone. A lot of people didn't preserve them. So I
mm.
I started actually sort of preserving, and I actually started building a good collection of Sri Lankan music. So it's really good that when I do clubhouse rooms about Sri Lankan music, I can actually go and talk about it now.
Really cool stuff. I'm hearing now through you talking about your new appreciation for the local music, this new interest in music history and how that is leading you down that path that you are saying yes to now. I want to hear a little bit more about what's taking you down your new path.
Right. So yeah. So I was I the unique thing about me is that I wasn't just a person who just listened to the music and then just moves on. I would listen to it, and then I would go and research about the artist. I would try to find what was the song about, and so I would always knows a lot about some about an artist or a song than a regular person, because that's kind of my thing. So I always whenever I listen to an album, I go and search in like in at least go to Wikipedia and try to go through it, who wrote the songs, who did the music, and what are all these connections, how it's get connected to somebody, right? So that interest was always there. And about the music history, there are two things that I was really got interested. One is um, the things like Woodstock and Beatles, that all the 60s, 70s era,
Mm-hmm.
and especially like Johnny Cash and all these things, how rich the music was back then, and how impactful that was on the lifestyle. So one thing happened in the podcast is I interviewed somebody who played on the first Woodstock. So that was one of my guests. So he's called Muruga Brooker. He played for Tim Hardin on the Woodstock Festival on the first day. So
Wow.
when I talked to him about it, and when he explained to me about everything that happened on that Woodstock Festival, and so that was really, I mean, that's where I kind of like found the purpose, because I was sharing this stories that wasn't told before, and now it's in my podcast. There's an account about what happened on the first day of Woodstock on my podcast, right? So
That's
that's
incredible.
one. Yeah, and then I started talking to some of the Sri Lankan artists who were like famous in the 80s or 70s, right? So these artists, they never had an interview on in the internet. They don't have anything on the internet about them other than the podcast they did with me. So because of that, I started talking to a lot of them, and I started taking their stories and putting it as a podcast. So at least I'm preserving part of that history that they're sharing about the 70s or the 60s, right? So that's where I kind of got more interest about the history itself. So then I wanted, um, this really led to me, because when I joined Clubhouse, a lot of people were asking me to come and talk on the rooms about maybe about the 70s music in Sri Lanka, or maybe about Johnny Cash or something like that. So I felt that maybe I know a lot of things. Maybe it's time for me to get this, uh, maybe learn this the right way. Maybe there are a lot of things that I don't know, or maybe I miss. So maybe I think I should consider going and learning the history properly. And so that's why I actually decided I think I need to get formal education on the music history, and that's where the aspiration started, that I want to become a music historian, not just a podcaster.
Mm, I love it. Oh my gosh. My mind is kind of blowing up right now because, we haven't necessarily been talking about aging,
Right.
in midlife. But what I'm seeing in you is that you're just getting going, you know. And I don't know if you're comfortable with me asking how old you are. If you
Yeah,
are,
I'm turning 43 this month.
yep,
Yeah.
there you go. And I have a theory that when what you're doing is you've been constantly putting yourself in the position of being a beginner. You began like this Zoom thing, the YouTube thing, the podcast thing, the now, it's this morphing, and you're just following along, and now it's like music history, going back and becoming a student, which I think a lot of people hold themselves back from doing as they get older, because I think, and I have a theory, that as we get older we feel the need to look like we have it all together, like we already know, that we're already experts, that we should be, because of our age. um, and I think that there's this youthfulness and energy that you get when you put yourself in the position of being a beginner, and letting yourself fall into that uncomfortable space. Do you feel at all uncomfortable about it? You seem so comfortable with it all, I've just got to say.
Maybe a little bit in the beginning when I'm starting something, but I kind of get comfortable quite easy.
I'm so impressed with your ability to just kind of dive into things. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah. This happens a lot, like especially like in Clubhouse, like people would ask me to come on certain rooms and talk about certain things. That what I always do is I only talk about what I feel and what I experience. So it's genuine, and I only talk about how I feel and how I experience something, about a song or about a music, even music, how I experience it, what I remember about it.
Yeah. So I'm going to take a complete left turn here. I just looked at the time. Oh my goodness. But I'm going to take the left turn anyway.
Right.
I read a blog post of yours, talking about meditation. When did you come into the practice of meditation? Was that early on or later for you?
Um, I was always interested, about spirituality, and I was on that, like looking for the truth thing when I was like a teenager. I went to I did all the Bible studies. I went and joined all these different Christian groups, and I actually went and joined some of these meditation groups. But all of that was more of a casual thing, just for the interest of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened is, this is actually when the pandemic happened. As I said, one of the experience that I felt was I was kind of depressed with all this change, and I have to get stuck in the house, right? So I came across, actually, our company that I was working during that time. They gave us this opportunity to talk to Deepak Chopra on a Zoom call, and
Wow.
so yeah, it just happened.
Wow.
And so he sort of introduced. I did that, and then I was so inspired from like talking to him personally on a call, right? So I started joining his meditation courses. So, and when I joined I did that, like the 21-day course, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And um and then my wife also joined with me on the first day itself. She said, okay, I will try with you. And then we completed one round of that. And then And then I thought there was another one. Maybe I should try that again. Maybe do it again. Then this time I even invited my son to join. So we did as a family. And then this
Oh,
became a practice
nice.
especially during the pandemic. This became our sort of like family thing where we do every night. We will just meditate together for 30 minutes. We'll do the all these programs. So we did that maybe 6 7 times already, the 21-day meditation. Keep on doing it.
Yeah.
And and then one of my friends who was actually a guest on my podcast, because he's a music fan. So we one of my friends, we talked. He saw that the interest that I was having on the meditations. So he offered me a free yoga class because he's a yoga teacher. So he gave me few lessons, free lessons, and said, "Why don't you try yoga as well?" Then so I did the free lessons. Then I signed up with him, and then I'm doing, you know, I do maybe 2 times a week. I do also yoga as well. So both the yoga and meditation has become a very big part of my life actually now. It's part of the lifestyle already, and I think the meditation really helped uh, for me to navigate through the pandemic, and also um, take some decisions that I had to take. One thing that actually happened in the pandemic, I know in the tech industry, the what happened is when pandemic happened, other lot of other people didn't have work to do. But what happened to the tech workers is they got, their workload just expanded.
Wow.
Like we were working
Right.
like 13 hours, 14 hours. Sometimes it was just meetings for 13 hours. Like it
Wow.
happened, came to that when, and so I have to find a way to deal with that situation. So I think the meditation was really how I actually navigated through that hard period, especially the mid 2020s.
Yeah. It was huge for me too. Meditation has been something I dabbled in starting in my 20s probably, and but it was very sporadic. I
Mm.
do a little bit and I would think, oh, this is great, I should do this more, but then I'd lose the thread. And about the time I was 48 is when I really was having some concentration issues and some just I just realized that I really needed to handle my stuff, and finding meditation. And so daily meditation and daily yoga for me has been a completely transformative thing. And there are days, I'm just going to say right now, there are days when, I meditate and it wasn't I'm going to put it in quotes, a good meditation day. There are day, right? Do you find that like you sit down and you've got the good meditation days where you feel all floaty and relaxed, and, it gets you to that new zone and you kind of forget about your body sometimes. And then there's the days where your mind is just stuck on that thing, and it just you can't let go of it.
Yeah,
But nonetheless, because I do it every day, I know it's helping. I know that even on the days when, I may still feel bad that day, or I can't imagine if I wasn't doing it, how I would have felt getting through last year. Whew.
yeah. I can relate to what you said. Like, uh, I would sometimes experience certain things when I do meditation. Then next day I want to have the same experience. But
Right.
when you have expectation, it's not going to be successful anymore,
It's
right? It's
true. It's You just have to let go of things, which is great. Like that's what I'm more and more as I do it, I'm like, let go of the expectations,
right.
you know. Um and I think you've done that a bit. Like it seems like you jumped into this podcast and the whole journey you're on right now. I love that it seems to me like you're doing this without expectations, that you're doing it because you feel like doing it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I
very
mean,
cool.
I just take the opportunity, like, because the podcasting, a lot of I hear the word, like, you have to monetize and all these podcast rooms. But I think my driver is not really the monetization. Like, I do it because I want to do it and I want to talk to people. And but it gave me a lot of opportunities as well. I started writing articles about certain, so people would invite me to join certain magazines, write articles to them because of my sort of what I'm doing in the podcast. I even got featured on a couple of music videos because of the podcast, because some of the guests wanted me to come and join their music videos. So I did some
How
music videos.
fun. Oh my gosh. Well, you've got a great look. You got that, you got rocking that beard, and you got, I wish everybody could see you, but they'll see the photo that you sent, which is awesome. I mean, and I love the cover art on your podcast too. Totally, totally badass looking. I'm just going to say.
You know, so the beard thing started because, you know, it was pandemic, so we were not going to office. So I stopped.
Did you
I
not
didn't.
have a beard before the pandemic?
No, I didn't have. I
Holy
started.
Channa,
I
you got a wicked beard. That's impressive for that amount of time. Oh.
and then I sent the picture to my friend to do the artwork. So he did the artwork. Then I got obligated. I think I need to keep the beard because the artwork is like with the beard, like it's part of the artwork. So it's part of the brand. So I have to keep the beard. And I just kept it, and I felt okay. Maybe I think from now onwards I'm going to have a beard.
It's awesome. It's awesome. So you have been, boy, talk about reinvention, right? It's like, that's
Right.
like the outward physical manifestation of everything that that you've done in the past year and a half or so. That's awesome. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I could talk to you forever, Channa. This is awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me and for your time. And I'm so excited to see where you go. Is there anything else that where can people find you? First of all, let's put that out in the world, and I'll put it in the show notes as well, of course.
Yeah, so I have a website called channa.com. So that has all the links and links to the articles and all the podcast links. But you can see the podcast on Spotify and Apple and all the platforms. Just search for Channa. And also I have a YouTube channel which is also Channa eh, channel. And I'm quite active in Instagram as well. So um, I think it's Channa3x on Instagram, and I'm quite active on Clubhouse. So if you're on Clubhouse, you can reach out to me in Clubhouse.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. I'm gonna have to watch for your rooms, and that'll be great. Cool. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone, for inviting me, and I really appreciate what you're doing and putting up all these stories of people who are reinventing themselves in, and not what I love about what you do is like a lot of these people that I listen to some of what you episodes you've done. Um, let's not just get old. Let's just do something, right? It's not just you're not just supposed to get old. I have this thing that I feel that every year I'm getting younger because of the knowledge and the wisdom I get. I think I feel much younger every year. So on my next birthday, I'm not 43. I will probably be like 41.
Well, there you have it. Channa was so fun to talk to. I love that he's letting himself explore his passion for music and letting the path unfold. He's not forcing it. He's just taking the next right step for him. And look where it's brought him so far. I can't wait to see what's next for him. Okay, so here's my challenge for you this week. Just say yes. Keep your heart open and an ear to the ground for something to do that would tickle you. Something that seems interesting and fun, and just say yes. Don't hesitate. Take some small action before you talk yourself out of it. I'm going to try it myself. Hey, speaking of which, did you know that I created a free guide for you designed to help you start taking the steps towards your next act? It's a workbook called 5 Steps to Your Midlife Reboot. It's an email series with some ideas and practical exercises that you can use over the course of several weeks to get past feeling stuck. You can do them at your own pace, as they'll be waiting for you in your inbox when you're ready for the next step. You can find the link to sign up for it in the show notes, along with information about how to listen to Channa's podcast and follow him on social media. You can just go to latebloomerliving.com/podcast and click on the show notes for episode 81. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you have a fantastic week. Stay safe and well. Talk soon.